Good evening and welcome to Law Talk, the show that brings the best of the Constitution, the days of law, and the fact that we are running in a nation that needs to be reformed to you each month. Mark, how are we reforming the nation tonight?
Well, we're here doing a special broadcast tonight. We're here in Washington, D.C. at the headquarters of the federal prisons. And the director of federal prisons was nice enough to let us use his office. And we're here for a very unique occasion. Ex-President Barack Obama was arrested today. He was impeached by the Congress. He was convicted by the Senate for
what?
The felony murder of border guard Brian Terry. He was convicted of felony murder. He was sentenced to death by electric chair. And here we are in the headquarters of the federal prisons in Washington, D.C., and we're waiting to see whether ex-President Barack Obama will get
an appeal.
We'll get a pardon. We'll get a pardon.
Get a pardon.
That
doesn't sound like a pardon.
Maybe he didn't get a
pardon.
pardon.
But I have a feeling that wasn't a pardon.
Yeah, I think he
and
didn't.
By the way,
he didn't get his pardon.
That was long enough for me to understand that I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Ex-president.
Your time's over.
No, once you're impeached and convicted, you're instantly not president. So what happened here, when he was convicted for the first charge, there's many charges, but the first charge was about Fast and Furious.
Fast and Furious. Isn't that the illegal gun running campaign that was run by his best friend, Eric Holder, through the ATF, in opposition by the ATF? But if you dared question it, you'd be fired. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, what happened was, just today, Eric Holder turned state evidence. And
Eric Holder turned state evidence?
Yeah, because he didn't want to, face the death penalty. So he kind of ratted out Barack Obama. And what he said that the whole intent of Fast and Furious was to give thousands of machine guns to the Mexican cartels, make it look like it was, Tea Partiers who were giving guns to the Mexican cartels, so they could have a backlash, confiscate all the weapons in the United States, and then they could round up Tea Partiers and whoever didn't agree with them, liquidate them, do whatever they needed, exterminate them, what they needed to do. But in the process, it kind of backfired on it because it killed border guard Brian Terry, and the ATF, who were involved in the conspiracy, went ahead and informed on them. So that was the problem.
Well, wait a minute. What I do understand is this. This is a allegedly clandestine operation that was supposed to monitor all the guns that were purchased illegally by straw buyers in Arizona and then tracked into Mexico so we could find out who the cartels were that got the weapons. But my understanding was they had no way to track the weapons.
No, not a single weapon was tracked.
Not a single weapon was tracked.
And then what happened is at least 400 Mexican citizens were killed by these weapons.
Well, wait a minute. That's 400 in one city.
Yeah.
But overall, they're looking at about 8,000 Mexican citizens were killed by the Fast and Furious weapons.
But that was not in the Congress's jurisdiction. So
you mean the president didn't get fried for the 8,000 people
no.
he was responsible for killing?
No,
okay.
It was just for Brian Terry.
Brian Terry.
So let's talk about what a felony murder is.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Okay, so if you commit a felony, and in the process of that felony, someone gets killed,
right,
even if it's completely inadvertent or accidental, that's a felony murder.
Right.
And what happens when you're committing a felony, you have enough intent there to give you the intent for murder.
Well, the thing about a felony murder is if, say, Mark, you and I went to burglarize a house, and we broke into the house. And
with intent to commit a felony therein.
With the intent to commit a felony. And by the way, little Johnny James came up and we punched him out and he hit his head and he died. That'd be felony murder.
That'd be felony murder. Exactly.
But in this case, what we had was illegal weapons being sold at the
which was a felony.
Which was a felony by the Attorney General at the direct direction of either Valerie Jarrett or Barack Obama. And those weapons went and they killed a Border Patrol officer.
Well, yeah. So, Holder ratted Barack out, and so, but for Barack,
well, what did Holder say?
He said that Barack did this as part of their whole campaign to confiscate guns and eviscerate the Second Amendment.
And, you mean to make it so that normal citizens couldn't own guns anymore?
Well, yeah, they wanted to have
they wanted to have an army of the Barack Obama army
what they
to
wanted
take
to do,
care of all the people.
what they figured, once they confiscated all the weapons in the that all the citizens had in the United States, then they could round up those pesky Tea Partiers, exterminate them, and they wouldn't have all these
pesky Tea Partiers. Weren't they going to put those in concentration camps?
Well, yeah, and then liquidate
them. And then they were going to say, oh, by the way, they died because there was insufficient food for them to live.
Well, they would.
Isn't that like the Japanese internment camps?
Well, like Stalin and Mao all did the same thing.
Oh, but Mao did a really good job. And I understand that, what was it, Cambodia?
Yeah, Pol Pot.
Yeah, Pol Pot, had the killing fields.
Yeah.
So are you trying to tell me that the president actually had an army set up to confiscate people to put them into a Pol Pot type regime?
Well, first you had to collect the weapons. Okay, so that was
without the weapons, they have no way to protect themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was the intent, and so that was the first charge, was the felony murder of Brian Terry, the border guard. Then there was the negligent homicide for Ambassador Chris Stephen and the 4 CIA agents in Benghazi.
Whoa! You're jumping to Benghazi now.
Yeah, and then you have.
But wait a minute, are we talking about because Hillary Clinton was organizing a guns for trade hire to Turkey to fight the Syrian rebels? Wasn't that the whole deal? And it was actually Chris Stevens in Benghazi who was coordinating the gun shipments from all the Libyan confiscated weapons that they took after they overthrew Libya.
Well, what the Congress felt that it was a negligent homicide because they say they could have saved Chris Stevens if they wanted, but they let him burn to death.
Chris Stevens shouldn't even been there.
Yeah, but the point is
he had no security.
But the point is they let him die because they didn't want to interfere with the election. Then we have the negligent homicide of 40 VA patients.
Wait a minute, whoa! You're talking about in Arizona,
right,
where all the people that were saying that, supposedly you're supposed to have your diagnosis for that colon cancer, but unfortunately it's going to take a year and a half.
Right.
And
a lot of people
colon cancer dies in 4 months, so you're not going to get any colon.
Okay, so then we had some regular old felonies. We had election fraud, and then we had
election fraud.
We had the frame up of Ted Stevens, Senator Ted Stevens of Alaska.
Oh, he's the one that mysteriously died in a plane crash and was actually the vote that would have stopped Obamacare, because he was the 60th vote, but he died mysteriously.
Well, after he was exonerated. And also, some FBI agents come up and said, yeah, that was an assassination. And then there was the suppression of the Tea Party in the election, about 15 to 20-minute votes.
Wait a minute, you're talking about Lois Lerner, where she had a whole regime stopping the Tea Party group's ability
to campaign.
To campaign against. And it's funny. The 2012 election turned on a very few million votes that the Tea Party could have easily turned.
Yeah.
So I got a question.
Okay,
Are you trying to tell me that Barack Obama was assassinated, or I should say terminated, because of all of this?
No, he was convicted of all these, but the reason that he was the reason he was electrocuted, the reason he was put to death was because of the felony homicide of Brian Terry.
The felony homicide.
But there were all these, or the felony murder. There was all these other felony charges as well.
But I got a question. Who's taking responsibility for the VA with all the people that died? Who's taking responsibility for the IRS when Lois Lerner is still getting her paycheck? Who's taking responsibility for Eric Holder, who's still partying like an animal as Attorney General?
Well, he is, like I said, he turned state evidence. Okay.
Turned state evidence, but he didn't turn really anything.
Okay, so that's how he got away from not being liquidated. Okay, so anyway, what is really interesting, what Obama's defense was, what his defense attorneys, because Holder had laid it out that this was intentional. They did the gun running. There was no way to say, but for Barack Obama doing this, Brian Terry wouldn't have died. So what he said was they used kind of a McNaughton defense for Barack, saying that he's a sociopath who lacks a conscience or the ability to discern right from wrong, and he didn't know right from wrong.
Wait a minute. The president doesn't know right from wrong.
Because he said, look, he's pursuing social justice, and he felt...
Well, are we talking about social justice or social Marxism?
No. If you could get rid of all these Tea Partiers and terminate them, then the country would be much better off. And so he was saying any means to achieve that end. So he has no moral compass. It's all relativistic.
All right. Well, let's move. Let's leave Mr. Moral Compass alone, and let's move on.